existing churches, you've got people all over the spectrum, and there's a lot more nuance of that than you think. Yeah. People who really are all over that spectrum. Yep. I think that's true. Yeah, and I think the level of conformity demanded or authority sort of imagined in those communities has all of the impact on the honest expression of the people. Oh my God, absolutely. So just because I feel safe in that environment. Yeah. To say truly where you are. Yep. So, I mean, that's one of the big pieces here, and I feel like over the years, I have heard you speak countless times about honesty, and I feel like you are expressing kind of it's a new season for you in that, finding a new expression of honesty. When it comes to your art, when it comes to, as you look at the way that we've created songs for the church to sing. Can you say just a little bit about what that kind of evokes for you, the conversation about honesty in our expression? I mean, in terms of the way it's done inside the church, I mean, I just think it's inarguable that the church as an institution, which is the first of those three things, and also the congregation, the practitioners of the belief, have also made it really hard. But I don't think the third thing, I don't think the idea of God has made it hard necessarily, but those first two for sure have created an environment where it's almost impossible to be truly honest, because there is such a the system of belief that's been constructed around, it's basically, think of it as arguably the historical empty tomb, and then the circus that's been built around that maybe one little true spot. Sure. This thing that's been constructed around by which you have to pay admission to get in, and there's a gift shop at the end. Mm-hmm. That thing, that culture, and that's been built around maybe that one true thing that's maybe true, has so emphasized perfection, purity in a way that's so ironic to me, because I mean it'd be way too big of a can of worms to try and open up right now, but the point is it has made it extremely difficult for artists. Sure. Because I do think that there is an inherently prophetic element to art making. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is just a speaking truth to power, kind of in other words, like a fearless truth speaking. As Dave Dark, who's a pal of mine in Nashville and a great writer, would say, expanding the talk-aboutable, expanding the range of the talk-aboutable, the things that we can talk about, that it's okay to talk about, to put language on, to provide language for. And if not artists, anywhere in culture, not just in the church segment of it, if not artists, then who, right? Not politicians who prey on fear. Why would they be in any way incentivized to dispel fear anywhere in culture when it is literally their stock and trade? I mean, they prey on fear because fear causes people to give up power, which is the thing that they collect and hoard. I mean, that's what politicians do. That's what political institutions do. They are collections of power and institutions based on power. Yeah. And so not politicians, not capitalism, because again, capitalism, it's exactly the same game. Sure. We can keep you consuming if we can keep you fearful. Right. You have a lack, and we're gonna. That's exactly right. If you're fearful, you can't get a date because you have bad breath. A need that we've just created, and a fear we've just created that maybe you didn't have just previously. Yeah. Now it's in your mind, and now we've got the toothpaste that will get you that date. And now we have it here, you can consume it or whatever it is. That's how capitalism is built. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to know what the rules are if you're going to engage with it. Right. And not be too easily taken with it, same with politicians. But in the church, but especially in the world of art, that's the place where that language can be created and disseminated. And it's that's and technology maybe. Unfortunately, technology is really run, it's in bed with capitalism on the whole. And so it's hard because I think technology has such potential to do it. It really does democratize, and it really does. I mean, it's like it evens. I mean, we've seen it just in the way that people have voices now. that didn't previously,
Sure.
and so
Yep.
things cannot go unnoticed. Like if the genocide in Darfur couldn't really have happened the same way or at the same pace, and the American government couldn't have gone as long declaring that it wasn't a genocide so that we wouldn't have to have taken responsibility for it if everyone had HD video cameras in their pockets.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't have happened. And in that way, technology is maybe even, could do it as well. But the point being, artists must, the be honest thing, especially in the church, is so important, but the church tends to be fearful of or detach themselves from artists who really do it.
Sure.
So I think that's a real hill. That's a real hill to climb. That's a rock for sure to push up. So I don't know. I've not seen a lot of churches or a lot of faith-based organizations who really who let go of the leash on artists to the extent that artists could. Because what if, like all great prophets, they come back with language disrupted to the extent that they pull the building down? And maybe that's the best thing for it. Because maybe there's been, maybe it's the circus built up around the kernel of potential truth. Yeah. So, I don't know. I just know that you got your work cut out for it. That's all I know.
Right.
I feel like I've had to, in order to be truly, really honest, I've had to detach from it completely. That hard as I tried, I wasn't able to do it truly. Right. In the context, on the inside of it, and I've seen a lot of my good pals have to exit in the same way.
Yeah.
And because if nothing else, the doing of it actually gets you booted.
Mm-hmm. Right, for sure.
Which is why you're having to create a counterculture in which to even do it.
Right.
Because you can't do it inside of the mainstream culture of the thing. You can't.
Yeah, it's self-perpetuating.
Yeah, you can, but it'll just churn you right out.
Right.
It'll just
GOs, but
it will. It just does. That's what the machine does.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that art has always had kind of a unique place in those institutions because it can just be propaganda, right?
It can.
Or
it's very useful that way.
Or it can reclaim the mystery. It can capture the imagination of the people. It can do some of these things to the point where there's freedom, where there's expansive kind of,
That's right.
So, and that's kind of the perpetual optimist that I am in that.
Well, and what's interesting is I like this grid, and I like what you're doing. But one thing it makes me think of, and this is probably, and it sounds like to me from what you've said about your kind of the prompts that you were talking about. It sounds like you're already on this, but I've already mentioned him once. I've always been a huge fan of Bob Dylan, and he notoriously has these few records that he made, in the late '70s. His Christian music that he made. He's got, especially these 3 records that are kind of his Christian records. When he went through supposedly a conversion experience to evangelical Christianity, and a lot of people have asked me what I think of Dylan's Christian records because when you hear someone's a Dylan fan and you associate them with Christianity, that's going to be your first question.
Sure.
What do you think about this Christian? What Dylan's all those Christian records? And here's the thing: I love all Dylan's records. There's something amazing about all of them.
Even Sinatra.
I actually love the Sinatra records. Yeah, I think he's in best voice he's been in 30 years. But anyway,
Lost some of the prophecy in it.
Yeah, but he's also said very unselfconsciously that was a season of his artistic life that he was doing something that even he doesn't know how to do. Most people never do. He did for a while, and he can't really do anymore. There's other things he can do, but he can't do that.
Yeah, interesting.
And so he's going after what he can do, and I think he's made a great post-prophetic career out of that.
Sure.
But the point being that people ask me about these Christian records of Dylan's. What I find myself saying is that while I love those records, I am less interested in hearing Bob Dylan sing to me. I'm less interested in hearing Bob Dylan sing to me about Christianity as I am interested in hearing a Christian Dylan sing to me about everything else. Like, in other words, if that's true, and if he really did go through, and that really is part of the grid through which he sees the world, I'm not super interested in hearing him sing to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, those records can be a little uninteresting to me because they're Bob Dylan singing about Christianity.
Sure.
And you can do that. Those are choices every artist gets to make.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm less interested in hearing artists sing to me about the grid through which they're looking, examine and talk to me about the grid.
Yeah.
I'd rather them just look through it and then tell me what they see.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I'm always say, is an artist's job description. Look at the world, describe it. Look at the world, tell us what you see. Yeah. Because that's ultimately going to tell me whether or not, that's going to tell me what you're really looking through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we go back to that hypothetical versus practical beliefs thing.
Sure.
If your hypothetical beliefs is what you talk about, but then I hear your music, I'm going to hear your practical beliefs.
Sure.
Unless you're manipulating me or yourself by singing to me about the grid, but it's not really the grid.
Yeah.
Like, because you can manipulate that. You can say, again, that could be aspirational. Here's the grid through which I think I'm looking at reality, and I hope to be looking at reality. But if you're describing it with your art, you can manipulate that.
Sure.
If you're literally wearing it like a pair of glasses and then talking to me, you can't. You really, you get caught. Like your fingerprints show up. They just do. And so that's why a work like this, I think, is going to be at its most interesting when these songwriters are not intentionally writing anything for the church.
Sure.
They're just looking at the world and describing it.
Yeah.
Because if all of that's real, and the proportion to which it matters to them will show through in what they wind up writing.
Yeah.
And it will ultimately be the most relevant thing both for the church and the world for that point.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, I mean, that you're poking right at some of like the most near and dear stuff to me in terms of my theology, because it's like this sort of sacred secular divide that we've created.
Right.
I mean, it's like that's a complete, a construct that's just a farce.
Right.
Again,
David Dark, his great quote, which I have complicated feelings about this quote now. This is a great quote. That he'll say that there isn't a secular molecule in the universe. And so, therefore, the divide makes no sense. I might say there's no sacred molecule in the universe.
Sure.
But the point is, it's all the same stuff, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I do believe that. And I think that those categories, again, those are another thing that I'm sure you may have heard me say before because I really like saying it, but it's helpful language, so I lean on it, is that the word Christian, when applied to anything other than a human being, is a marketing term. And which is exactly that whole sacred secular thing. It's like, it's not that it's not helpful. It is. Marketing terms are super helpful.
Sure.
They just have no power. The word Christian cannot mean when applied to anything other than people what it means when applied to people. Because when applied to people, it means to the exclusion of everyone else. These are the people who are apparently redeemed and saved and going to be in heaven. Sure. To the exclusion of all these other people. But when you use it because they are people with souls who have either made choices or something has happened to them out of their control. The point is, they've been redeemed and saved, and there's a salvific thing that's happened to them or whatever. Yeah. However you believe that works. And so these are the people in heaven, But when you start to use it, when you talk about educational institutions or record stores or breath mints or theme parks or whatever it is, radio stations. When you start, you can't possibly. These are soulless things. This is dead matter. This table cannot. We are here at church right now. This is not a Christian table. This is not a Christian building. Right. This building is not going to be among the architecture someday in the new heavens and new earth because it's been rubber stamped with the word Christian on it. So it cannot be made to mean the same thing. Right. But it does help us in culture to find our way to the things we wish to consume. Sure. So if we're looking for Christian things that we think could mean what? Right, true, good, beautiful? I mean, let's break the tape and let's march with our cameras into a Christian bookstore and let's see how good, right, true, and beautiful the things we find there are. Yeah, because most of it's not. Yeah. As a person who lives in Nashville and has been in the Christian music business, which is not a real thing, but has been in it for 20 years, and has seen how the sausage is made, I'll just tell you that I and my friends in the Christian music business are just as likely to lie to you as anybody else, and often have, even unintentionally. without knowing just how wrong we are about a certain thought that we've put into a really sweet melody and that's easily for congregations to sing, whatever.
Yep.
Like, you can't, you have to be critical all the time.
Yep.
You have to. And so, again, those categories, man, and that language is really unhelpful.
Yep.
And what it does ultimately is sell security.
Yep.
A billboard that says a Christian radio station's name on it and then says safe for the whole family is selling the same thing.
Yep.
The toothpaste company
For sure.
selling.
Yeah.
It's selling, wait, safe for the whole family? Does that mean that what I'm listening to, if I'm not listening to that, is not safe?
Yep.
And so it's selling me safety, which of course I want for me and my family.
Right.
Which
What
is,
parent would you be if you didn't want that for your kids?
which is also the strangest, weird, false advertising, because Jesus was not, according to the Bible anyway, safe, and certainly not safe for the whole family. He came to divide mother and daughter, father and son. And again, I don't have a dog in that fight anymore. But the point being, it just seems like false advertising.
Yeah, for sure.
So all of that, as you well know, and as this seems to be an effort to break down, is really tricky and misleading language.
Right.
Yeah. So what I think would be, what I hope comes of this, is people being able to get free of those categories long enough to just look at the world, tell us what they see,
Yeah.
and in the ways that their spirituality and their belief about these ideas, in as far as it's truly important to them and really is part of the grid through which they're looking at the world to help them make sense of it, it will come through in what they write regardless.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be interested in squinting my eyes at.
Right.
And that's what I hope. But it's really hard to get free of it.
Sure.
It's hard to do when you live your whole life in it.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's the, like, if you're a fish and you're trying to learn about what water is, right? It's the
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You don't even know you're in a boat.
Yeah.
Back to the whole boat.
Right.
You don't even know
For
you're in one.
Yeah.
You don't know where you end and the boat starts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not all the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing that you believe. It's a thing you can disbelieve. It's a thing that you can re-believe. It's a thing you can unbelieve.
Yeah.
And sometimes you should.
Yeah.
Reimagining